we are talking about the West. What's that? That's the wrong kind of West? Oh, come on. What's up, guys? My name is Moo. I am a college student who loves reading, and I'm here to share that love with all of you. Today, we are talking about the West, and not the Wild West, but the Western Front. Today, we are talking about All's Quiet on the Western Front by Erich Maria Remarque. This book I've been waiting to read a really long time. I first heard about it when I watched a video about the movie by Wendigoon, who is a YouTuber that I really like. It definitely very much inspired me to read the book because I am a little bit of a wuss when it comes to gore in movies, but I can handle it in books. So I decided to give this book a try, and I very thoroughly enjoyed it. It is known as one of the first, if not the first, anti-war book in Western history, and I can definitely see why. War is awful, and Remarque held nothing back. He told the public how terrible war really is. He was one of the first people to do that, and he was the first to do it in such a big way. So, without further ado, let's get into it. The summary says, few novels have ever achieved such a dramatic acclaim or such enduring success as Erich Maria Remarque's brilliant and bitter novel, All Quiet on the Western Front. Hailed by critics the world over as the 20th century's definitive novel on war, it has sold millions of copies in the United States and has been translated into 25 languages. Very short, doesn't say too much about the book, but I will definitely get into it, don't worry. The first page opens the book like this. This book is to be neither an accusation nor a confession, and least of all an adventure, for death is not an adventure to those who stand face to face with it. It will try simply to tell of a generation of men who, even though they may have escaped its shells, were destroyed by the war. That is a much better way to describe the book. All this is a fictional story that parallels the real war written by a veteran, incorporating veteran stories into his story and creating a narrative that tells the terrors of war. This novel follows Paul, a boy who enlisted into the war. He fights on the front lines in the trenches in World War I and shares his terrible experience. It is a very depressing, very sad book, but it's not supposed to be anything but. It's supposed to be an informative, impactful book that tells the truth through a fictional story. And it does so very well. The book is not formatted in a linear way, which is different from the movie because the movie is linear, but it first starts right after a battle where 70 men were lost and the remaining 80 go to eat. It introduces all of the characters whose names are not that important because I will not be talking much about them, but it also introduces Paul, our main character, who is a stand-in for Remarque. Paul shares a lot of the same hobbies and thoughts as Remarque does, and that makes his character that much more impactful. If I'm going to read a book about war, I would want it to be from a veteran because they know the most about the situation that they're writing about. For a very long time, and even still to this day, war was seen as glamorous, and it's not as much that way anymore, but throughout World War I and World War II and Vietnam and all of that, it was known as a heroic thing to become a soldier, and it's really cool and really rewarding, and you'll be a hero, all this, and then you get crushed down. The problem in all wars is that they dropped boys. I am not yet at the age where I can drink or smoke or anything like that, even though I don't want to. I'm not legally at the age where I can. However, I could join the military right now if I wanted to. I am barely an adult. I am basically still a child. I'm still dependent on my parents. I could be independent, but I'm not. But you're sending kids to war who do not have fully developed brains yet. They are kids who still see other adults as superiors. The older generation knows best to them. I was very lucky that I grew up in a home where conversation was important. It wasn't just what I say goes. I respected my parents as authorities, but they respected me and my siblings as human. And that doesn't always happen. When we feel like there's been an injustice, we get to talk about it, we get to talk through it. It's really great. But it's not like that for everyone. And it especially wasn't like that in the 1910s. It was Paul's teacher who had him and all his classmates join because he played it up. He said it would be good. He thought it would be a good experience for everyone. It said on page 16, we often made fun of them and played jokes on them, but in our hearts we trusted them. And I think that's such a depressing thing. These young boys are trusting the adults in their life to tell them the right way to do things. And they're dying for it. They have to see the worst of the worst. They have to do terrible things. They have to risk their lives because they thought it was the right thing to do because an authority figure told them to. There was even a boy who was very hesitant and who didn't want to do it, but because of pressure from the teacher and pressure of the boys who were influenced by the teacher, he ended up going. And he died during his first battle. It's just a very depressing narrative because it is young boys who trusted their teacher and were wronged. They were kids younger than I am now who went off and fought these wars. World War I was a very, very, very bloody war. It was awful. Terrible things happened to everyone on the front lines. In the 1910s, the average lifespan was mid-40s, 46, 47. It went up a little bit through the late 1910s, and then it plummeted in 1918 to 36. And that was partially because of the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu started in 1918, but it was also because there was a war going on, a war that went until late 1918. These boys did not have a chance. None of them got to grow up. Even if they did survive the war, they would have to live with the horrors that they saw and the horrors that they helped commit for the rest of their lives. The First World War was the first time that anyone had even started exploring PTSD and trauma and shell shock and all that. And it wasn't described very well in this book from a scientific or psychiatric sense, but the feelings that were described by Paul very much showed the mental health problems that he was going to get from this war. He watched so many of his friends die. He watched terrible deformations in people who got hit with shrapnel and other weapons. He had to intimately kill a Frenchman who fell into a shell hole with him, and he had to reflect about how these were people he did not want to kill. No one wanted this war, and yet everyone was fighting it. It's just such a sad story because it's rooted in reality and there's no happy ending. The war may have ended. The war ended over a century ago. But this book is still very impactful. I would say this is one of my favorite books of all time because it's something that I will always remember. It is something that will stick with me for a very long time because the story was just that impactful. This book shocked people when it came out. Civilians didn't want to believe it. They didn't want to think about what was happening at the front lines. They just wanted to pretend that everything was okay, but it's not. We have examples throughout history about how terrible war is and how traumatizing it is and how it's just not a good answer, and yet it still happens. Even today, in 2023, we don't need violence as communication. We are a more connected world than ever, and yet people still think that violence is an answer to any sort of problem. It's not. Though this book didn't shock me as someone who is living in 2023 rather than the 1920s, it still impacted me in a way that I am not going to easily forget. I very much loved this book. It will probably be one of my top books ever, and it was just really, really well done. Unless you truly can't handle gore, I believe this is a good book for everyone to read. I think if you like war history and you are anti-war, it would be a good book. But I think everyone should read it. It's very, very, very impactful. And I know I keep saying that, but I mean it. It's so good. It's so well done. And I have nothing but praise for this book. There's nothing I can criticize because it was done so well. I don't know how really have anything else to say. If you liked the video, make sure to like it. If you like the content I make sure to subscribe. Comment if you have anything to say, but it was just a good book. And that's all I have to say. So this has been Moo. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will definitely see you in the next video. Bye bye.